Well, hello and welcome to our webinar sponsored by Digital Solutions Group in collaboration with Elerian AI, where we will explore the challenges facing South African contact centers in the world of AI-driven customer experience. Today, we'll focus on conversational AI and its big brother, generative AI, and how organizations are using these technologies to improve and enhance their customer service. And if you joined us early, you saw a little bit of a film on how we can do some of those things. My name's Jerry Brown, and I'll be your host today. Today, we're going to discuss, debate, and share the pros and cons of these technologies and where, when, and how they can be used, and the benefits that customers and employees will gain. We'll be covering topics such as what is conversational AI? How is it different from voice-driven IVR? What can contact centers accomplish with conversational AI? Can AI voice assistants really enhance customer experience? And how easy is voice AI deployment and integration? And of course, we're here to answer any question you may have, which you can pop into the chat window. And if we don't get to them all, we'll be happy to respond via email after the webinar. And just so you know that we do value your opinion, we'll have a couple of polls and a brief, really brief, final survey to get your thoughts on today's topic. Today, there's no shortage of articles, blogs, and other media events about AI. And in particular, chatbots, ChatGPT, Bard, and conversational AI are creating many diverse views, along with negative and positive headlines. Whether it's the end of civilization as we know it, multiple job losses, droids taking over the earth, immediate cures for all diseases, reduction of employee drudgery, and improved customer service, there really doesn't seem to be common ground. And for many, it appears to be all or nothing. But just ask yourself this question. How many times in the past month or even in the past week have you had a customer service interaction where you waited patiently or not on the phone if you were lucky enough to find a phone number and would have been delighted if someone or something had answered your seemingly simple inquiry? Yes, I mean a chatbot, or even better, an intelligent voice agent. So with that tantalizing smorgasbord laid out before you, I'm delighted to welcome my fellow conversationalists, Brandon Mazzaros, CXG CEO at DSG, and Dion Milson, CEO at Elerian AI. Good to see you both. How are you doing today?
Good, excellent. And you, Jerry?
Very well, very well. Dion, can you give us a brief intro into yourselves and to Elerian, if you would?
Yeah, thanks so much, Jerry. Lovely to be here, and thanks very much for inviting us to share. I'm Dion Milson. I'm the CEO of Elerian AI. We're a conversational AI business, so we're busy deploying digital agents that understand and speak to human beings using a voice-based assistant, and we've been deploying into contact centers in South Africa and the United Kingdom for a while now. We're a London-based business with branches in both countries.
That's great. And you saw a little bit of what Elerian can do in the preview video, and thanks again, Dion, for that. I've been fortunate to work with Dion and team for a while now, and I know it's a really great solution, and we're really looking forward to our conversation today. Brandon, let's hand over to you. Tell us a bit about yourself and DSG.
Thank you, Jerry. I currently serve as the CEO for both what we refer to as our customer experience group and digital resilience, our cyber business. Both of them are members of Digital Solutions Group. So I've been with Digital Solutions Group for nearly 25 years. So there's quite an interesting run there. But I think part of that is just that I have experience ranging from contact centers, customer experience, business building, contact centers, BPO, BPaaS, cybersecurity. So effectively, one of the things that we enjoy about, being around for 25 plus years as an organization is that you get to enjoy and interact with individuals such as Dion and Elerian AI, particularly around the space. So it's something that we're very excited for today.
Yeah, great. And I think we're all looking forward to this. So I know that for many of us that have experienced poorly designed and underperforming IVR systems and chatbots whose most frequent refrain is, "I'm sorry, I don't understand that," are still skeptical about these tools. This is primarily because many of our experiences have been with chatbots that are programmed to handle general questions and are not able to handle the depth and breadth of inquiries that modern contact centers frequently get. These general models cannot handle diverse intents and different ways of asking questions and lack the contextual sophistication needed to respond to even simple inquiries. As a recent article in Financial Times noted, chatbots can perform limited transactions, but they can't have real conversation. Humans supported by new technology still have a lot going for them. And of course, there are many voices in the customer experience world who will say, customers only want to talk to real humans. Well, naturally we do. But what if there aren't enough people? Or if they can't answer questions accurately, confidently, articulately, or at 2 a.m., then what? Nobody's handing out refunds for wasted time. So that's the landscape, or I guess for many, the battlefield that we're seeing. So let's get started with the main event. And Brandon, I'll start with you if I may. Just give us an idea of what the difference is between text-based and voice-based digital agents, if you would.
Jerry, great questions. I think for us, when we look at it, we know that chatbot and or text-based agents really rely on prompts, FAQs, keywords, and naturally, the responses that you get are very similarly. So it's prompt-based. It says, press 1 through 5 or 1 through 10, and you'll get a particular response. And I think, for us, when we look at that in comparison to what we refer to as conversational AI or digital assistants, we know that the best way for us to describe it, it's not FAQ based. It's that chatbots will engage a user with prompts, whereas what we provide via Elerian is about understanding customer intent. So when we talk about the digital assistants versus chatbot, we know that digital assistants offer flexible dialogue handling, the ability to free flow in a conversation, understand what we call intent recognition. We talk about self-directed transactional capabilities that are linked to what we call sort of autonomic back-end process. So linked, so it's intelligent in nature. I think also understand that the AI portion, or in terms of the agent assist, allows for you to what we call to discern intent, understand sentiment, and really drive a conversation that's about understanding and being aware of so what we refer to as emotion and mood. So I think that there's a very distinct difference between the two. One prompt FAQ, and it's very limited in its engagement, whereas the other is having almost a conversation with you that's driven with a particular intent and understands your intent and emotions and mood.
And I think that's the key thing, as you said, it is a conversation. And I think, Dion, you'd probably agree with that's very much, it's called conversational AI for a reason. And I think you'd agree that's very much why we see this as a significant enhancement to just a chatbot.
Yeah, there are two critical things, I think, as you move from the old school IVR-based prompts that Brandon referred to through to conversational AI and voice-based. I think the first one is semantic understanding. So the move from the prompt base where you need a prompt or do a bag of words search to really get what it is the caller requires, which is that old school hierarchy flow. Which typically leads to, it's just a really terrible caller experience. So you've got that. So that's the one piece, I think, where modern technologies come so far around semantic understanding. So with large language models that are available, I think, and we've seen it with ChatGPT coming to the market, there's the semantic, the ability of AI to understand the meaning behind what a caller is saying is incredible, and it's advanced massively. So that's the one piece of semantic understanding. The second piece is obviously speech recognition, and that varies across the world depending upon where you are geographically. Traditionally most speech recognition models have been built in the Western world around English, and specifically we think about American languages, American accents, etc. And as you move further away from that in terms of different dialects and different languages, I guess speech recognition quality reduces. So that's at a variable state, but you need those two things to happen in concert really well, accurately, if you want to have an intelligent voice-based conversation.
That's great. Well, I think that really clears it up for a lot of us. And I think what will be interesting, we're going to have our first poll coming up. And really, because now we have a much better idea of what we're talking about with an intelligent voice agent, it'll be interesting to see how many people out there have actually interacted with a voice agent. So perhaps we can bring up that first poll question. And as you can see, we basically got 2 questions here. One, as a customer, if you will, have you interacted with an interactive voice agent before? So yes, no, or not sure. And then the second question, as a business, are you looking to implement an intelligent voice agent in the next 12 to 18 months as part of a business strategy? And again, yes, no, not yet, or other. So if you want to take a moment to vote, you'll be able to just click on, take your pick on those 2 questions, and then we'll have the poll answers for you momentarily. We'll just get a percentage of what our various attendees are seeing out there. So we'll just give everyone a chance just to get their votes in. I think what we're seeing, and the reason I think that was so important to begin to really define that, I think, was because we really do have some different ideas now. So we've got our votes up there. You'll see, yes, that's great. We have, if you can see that on the screen, 78% have actually interacted with a voice agent. So that's really good. A few haven't and aren't sure. And then of the people on the business side, we've got that's pretty good. I think 43% looking to do that. What do you guys think, Brandon? What's your thoughts on those results?
I think a couple of things. One, that there is interaction. The second would be, it would be cool to kind of understand what that is. We know that today, kind of interaction within Alexa's, all of those are standard in terms of those digital assistants, and they talk to hands-free. To Dion's point a little earlier, the question here is those are kind of very centric to regions. So it would be interesting, as we maybe move further, to understand what, where and how. But we know that some of those are pervasive already, in terms of general use, driving hands-free kind of conversations. But I think more so, interestingly enough, that we're looking at it moving forward. So as organizations, what do we see? Can we optimize? Can we manage engagements where possibly we can, kind of see agents and or, individuals managing complex stuff versus conversations being managed that have predictability to it. So
absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's my take on it.
Yeah. And Dion, what are your thoughts on those results?
Yeah, I think we've definitely seen a massive adoption in people's willingness and how much they engage with voice-based machines. And typically that has been within the context of Alexa, Siri, etc. So it's kind of a task-based. So, I ask Alexa or Siri to do something and they respond, hopefully if they understood me. Which is quite different from a conversational flow. So I think we've seen quite, but it's definitely opened up a willingness of people to say, actually, you know what, when I just want something quickly done, voice is such a natural method of communication for people. So a lot of, and make no mistake, I think digital adoption of channels such as WhatsApp and text, etc., through apps, etc., has been fantastic and has had a massive role to play in customer experience, and customers be able to get what they want because people want convenience. Absolutely. But the reality is voice, in terms of coming into organizations or as a channel, is still increasing in volume and shows no sign of that, because I think people still feel it's a very natural way and want to speak to someone who can very quickly solve a problem. So I think it's fabulous that people have experience engaging with voice. In terms of the second kind of, in terms of plan to implement, I spoke at a conference last week where the question was slightly different. How many people have implemented any AI within their business in a production? And literally the answer was under 5%. And I think that's part of the challenges people face. And so there's this massive world of AI out there, but the reality is, what's useful for my business and how do I get an ROI out of it?
Yeah. And I think, it kind of is a nice segue into, a question that we have from Nessa on, what kind of business can it be used for? And I guess to you, Brandon, perhaps I'll just reframe the question is, where are you seeing your customers asking for or using intelligent voice agents in the contact center? And what do you think are the features and capabilities are the most compelling reasons for wanting to do that?
Great question, Jerry. So I think when we look at it from a perspective of organizations, I think some of them are reviewing it and saying, well, 12 to 18-month horizon, what am I looking for particularly? Are there particular use cases I'm looking to solve? So that's the first. It's a considered question. It's a measured question. I think Dion's point was exceptionally valid around ROI, because it's not just investing in for the sake of investing in technology, but investing in it so that you see a return, but an improvement in customer experience. So we see that as part of the equation. I think the secondary element here that we're speaking to is, they're saying, well, where can I use it? Is it applicable in these following scenarios? And often or not, it speaks to, again, that business use case. The key, though, and I must just caution and again share, all these wonderful things are great using the technology. The organizations that are looking at these, though, need to be clear that there needs to be a very solid business process. Because sitting behind this engagement is an integrated experience. It's not just a standalone press 1 through 5. And they do have a role to play, but here it's integrated. So your business process needs to drive a certain level of predictability in terms of outcome. So when organizations are looking at, they're saying, well, we're looking at it to help with concierge, digital concierge. We're looking at it from an optometrist appointments to be set up in general settings. It could be for a car service, whatever it may be. It might be a scenario where we talk to internal service desk agents, that employee experience side. So we're seeing a number of use cases. The reality, though, is it has to make sense for the organization. The second part to that, Jerry, is when you talk to the features and capabilities, I think organizations look at it and go, okay, well, maybe this is scary, and what do I need to know about? The reality is it's kind of like any other technology. Do I have the ability to engage, manage conversational wizard design and dialogues? Do I have the ability as an organization to manage these directly on a platform, on a system, and in a way that makes sense to our organization? The other is that, and I think part of what is kind of coming to the fore is that what we call that low to no code. Everybody talks of the promise, no code in terms of saying, all right, I've now designed my conversation. How do I integrate? And I think organizations, there was a recent review from Harvard Business Review that said in a particular survey, 42% of organizations are going, it's wonderful, I can get this stuff, but how do I integrate? Because maybe my resources are tied up elsewhere, and I need to be able to manage seamless and simple integration to get to the net result of the conversation being automated. So I think some of those are some of the key, and naturally then we talk to data. So those built-in data collection and analytics that improves your service over time, and I'm just going to use the word service loosely, but also allows for you to kind of go, well, what are my metrics that I'm focusing on here? What is the intent rate? What do we want to see as a close or a resolution rate? And also drop off in terms of reducing escalations, because you want that conversational, for lack of a better word, platform, or what you've designed for you to have a look at and go, well, where can I improve? How do I improve? And what do I do over time to improve? So I think that should kind of encapsulate some of it.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. And I think that again, helps us really begin to understand, the questions are being asked, where will we use that? And Dion, you mentioned obviously ROI is a key part of this, but what are some of the other benefits that you see with organization using an intelligent voice agent in this way?
Yes, we typically started out focusing on financial services and insurance contact centers, and we started off with inbound calls where we kind of answering calls, identifying the caller, and maybe doing some self-service options, authentication mechanisms, so variety of different ways of authenticating the caller, and then kind of getting them what they need from a self-service perspective, getting a bank statement, getting this kind of document, changing their personal details, and then as well as kind of standardized processes. I think Brandon spoke about process, kind of anything that's kind of a low to medium complexity, that's a standardized process, that's high volume. That's kind of bread and butter stuff with the digital agent. So example of that might be first notification of loss claims into the insurance industry. Recently, obviously, some of the benefits around that, I think there's obviously an efficiency benefit. All of a sudden, you are now taking a chunk of human agent time, and you're able to automate the stuff that's mundane, kind of really, really little value add. And with voice currently being the most expensive channel, by automating the piece, and they're really focusing the human agents on where they can add value around stuff that requires empathy or some kind of a nuanced decision making, etc., which the digital agent is going to handle very well. So you kind of got this really, I suppose, taking the heavy lifting out of it in terms of the mundane stuff that is process driven, that we can automate, and the digital agent can engage with the caller in a fluent, natural way, and allowing the human agent to really just focus in on where the higher value offering. And we've seen that play out really well, specifically in, the South African BPOs are doing exceptionally well at the moment, winning business. And a lot of that's overseas driven, UK, US clients or end clients. And part of the reason they're running that business is because within South Africa, our agents have this cultural or service culture where there's a natural affinity of wanting to assist and level of empathy and understanding, and I guess proactivity in terms of helping to resolve a caller's question. So that kind of thing is, but make no mistake, we're not the lowest cost jurisdiction in the world. And I guess a blended approach where we focus in on kind of reducing costs of the mundane stuff and freeing up the human agent to follow in on where the real value add has been a significant benefit. So, and with that, I think there's an expected benefit, which is obviously the efficiency. The unexpected benefits are improved customer satisfaction. And that's driven out of, well, all of a sudden the human agent's got more time to engage with the customer. They're not sitting there driven by how many seconds have they spent on this phone call to resolve it. Secondly, in many instances on the mundane stuff, because we've got the integrations that Brandon spoke about to the back end, we've immediately got access, or the digital agents immediately got access to all the company-wide data relating to this person who's called in. So, and we've walked into organizations where literally you've had contact center agents trying to move between 10 or 20 different screens to respond to the caller. So the efficiency of being able to, a digital agent, to collect all of that, understand, hold on, what's relevant to this caller and what's not relevant, and answer them immediately, because an API call literally is fractions of a second. To be able to immediately respond to that caller has introduced great efficiencies in terms of reducing average handling time, as well as customer satisfaction. And a side benefit, the unexpected part, is also, funnily enough, human agent satisfaction, where a lot of the stuff that was mundane, that, to be honest, no one really wants to do, but it's a paying job in South Africa. And so we take it, that ultimately has been removed from their workload, allowing them to add value elsewhere. So I think that's good. Obviously, other benefits is the digital agents available 24/7. There's no waiting time. It can, there's no limits to the number of calls, concurrent calls it can take. So it's really helped customers who have peaks and troughs. So, in taxis and out of taxis and those kinds of things where you've suddenly got a spike. Another one is well known in South Africa, when there's a power outage, all of a sudden, all of the ISP companies get a massive fluctuation of calls because everyone wants to know why the internet doesn't work or why the connectivity's gone down. So, you don't have to go and employ all of a sudden an extra 300% of agents to deal with that fluctuation. The digital agent can just handle it.
I think that's a nice segue too, I think, to my next question to Brandon, and you sort of hit on it, the improvement in customer experience, the improvement in employee engagement that comes from this. And perhaps, Brandon, just articulate that a little bit more, because I think that's really what Dion's saying is you free up agents to do the more challenging things, the more interesting things, frankly, and customers can have those sort of what they believe, what we believe as customers, fairly simple things handled much quicker, much easier, much slicker.
So Jerry, yes, I agree with you on 100% here, in the sense that also what we're seeing is there's a massive movement in, kind of support augmentation. So, I think one of the other areas that you see, and we kind of see them as two lanes. The one is, how do we help the agents leveraging what's available? So augment that support process. And then the secondary one is kind of, as you're rightfully saying, Dion, is kind of leveraging agents and the teams that are in those worlds to be able to deliver a far greater experience, rather than, driven by numbers. You need to answer 700 calls within X period. There's a significant amount of pressure on these young humans. So that's the one side. I think the other, when you talk to the improvement in those customer experiences, we know that the drive from a perspective of organizations is always there in terms of how do we engage. And I think the key for us here is that, again, customers are looking for extraordinary experiences. And either that's delivered through an agent, or you can drive a particular set of process that's predictable in nature. Dion, you mentioned it. That's low to medium sets of complexity. And you're able to kind of get through a fair amount of volume. Now, practical examples, and we're starting to see some of these come through. Telefonica, a massive organization, they're based across 15 countries, deployed it in their organization to manage a set of intents across 15 different scenarios. A lot of work went into it, but today you see them automating 72 million of those calls across that particular estate. So particularly in the Peruvian world. So why am I sharing that example? It means that those particular individuals that are dedicated to that support are now able to drive deeper set of complex engagements. Similarly in banks, similarly in some of the other industries where, all right, there is something here from a user intent or stress that's picked up and is part of this journey, then opts out to a user, to an agent, and effectively that agent then manages that because there's a human-to-human requirement here. So I think there's that. And then we talk to that employee experience side. We're starting to see, and we know that organizations, there's a significant drive to recognize the employee experiences. How do you improve those? Again, ROI. So, we know that there are service desks that are kind of automated internally. There's organizations that, again, sort of citing a massive worldwide example with organizations that sit across the healthcare sector, 60,000 employees. How do you serve those? You use a smart, intelligent conversational AI bot that's kind of driven and set up to manage certain things. How do I apply for leave? Where do I get this? And all of those things are managed in a very structured way, again, driving employee experience rather than employee sending somebody, getting an email, thank you so much, we'll get back to you in 24 hours. This immediately helps. So those are just some of the kind of benefits we're seeing across some practical examples.
Yeah, I mean, some of those benefits, Brandon, you think about, we, as I said, we kind of came in very much focused on inbound, and very recently we kind of been brought to our attention around outbound. We've got a lot of requests to implement outbound based agents, and recently we had a look at the organization, and South Africa's got it's a bit of a problem around spam, and in terms of, I don't answer my call on my phone if I don't recognize the number. It's just because, I know that 95% of the time it's going to be some kind of spam. And so, as a digital agent, we don't do any cold calling. However, a lot of the time, the caller actually has initiated some kind of, or requires some kind of assistance. So you might have inquired on a website or on a Facebook page, etc., responded to say, hold on, I'm interested in this product. But then how does that organization get hold of you? Because now we don't want to answer the phone number we don't recognize, etc. You might, for instance, another example is we've all got bank cards or credit cards, etc., which come to an expiry. And then the organization is trying to get a hold of us to now deliver a new card, etc., and can't. And we came recently, it was the statistic was around 40% of the agent's time was spent just trying to get hold of the right person, get them on the phone. So this is multiple times they're trying to dial the person, etc., and then get them on the phone, make sure they can talk right then. And only 6% of the time was actually engaging with the caller. And that's like such a waste of human potential, that 40%. And so that kind of heavy lifting around that kind of stuff is something that the digital agent can automate so simply, just by kind of sending an SMS or WhatsApp to say, hi, it's Dion from Elerian. I'm going to be calling in a moment about your bank card renewal or delivery. Please answer the call. 30 seconds later, call comes in, and we can engage with you to make that happen. So I think those kinds of things are where there's challenging kind of circumstances. Automation can play a fabulous role.
Just to quickly jump in, Jerry, one quick addition.
Go ahead.
Yeah, Dion, one of the other things we're also seeing in that inbound world, some of those organizations are dealing with volume, quantum of calls, and they're going, how do I become efficient but not impact that customer experience? If you're seeing some of the sort of the requests that we're starting to see come through is going, well, how do I augment and have this upfront so that it alleviates some of the pressure, so that I'm able to kind of contain some of my cost. And it's not just all about cost, but contain the cost and manage this through what I would call a digital agent, in the sense of how do I augment my resourcing strategy to meet particular demand cycles, particular purchasing days. So, the seasonal stuff and Black Fridays and all these things. Organizations deal with complexity around how do I staff for this? Where do I get people? And here you can use that as tactically and strategically to support that kind of volume that you need to manage and then taper out again. So there's significant application of it.
And I think the thing is about what Dion said and what you've just added, Brandon. I think that outbound component is such a critical element. We sort of go, I'm not saying we haven't thought seriously about it, but as you say, lots of organizations want to reach out to the customers. They want to give them a legitimate offer. But of course, we are now programmed to just turn off. So by being able to literally introduce yourself, I think it's a great way of doing it, via WhatsApp or via email, SMS, whatever it happens to be, set the scene, and then the person can either decide to take the call at that moment or perhaps take the call at a later point. Now you've effectively qualified that customer. You've done it very effectively, very cost effectively. And what I would say is a very elegant way for both the organization and the customer. And I guess, my next question sort of, takes the next step from that, sort of saying, okay, well, that sounds great. So what are some of the best business applications? You've sort of talked broadly, but in terms of specific businesses, I know you mentioned, Dion mentioned BPOs. I think it's a great application there because, again, any organization, but certainly BPOs, are dealing with peaks and valleys all the time. And with the best will in the world, making sure you've got enough people is always going to be a challenge. So just, some of the applications that you're seeing, that really are paying off for customers. Brandon, I'll maybe just start with you.
Again, I've cited a few, but I think there's, when you talk to practical application, there's ways and means that you could probably, and again, manage what we call a kind of a hybrid world. So, Dion touched on one of them, but, today's world, that kind of authentication. So who are you? What are you? If you just authenticate and manage that part of your process, and then jumped into kind of, if you needed a human sort of intervention, great. I mean, that would already shave, because, BPOs and organizations of those nature speak to minutes. They talk to minutes and seconds that impact the ability to serve a larger set of volume. So that's one of those. I think the other is where you talk to kind of, here's another practical example, where you talk to a journey that you're looking to create that has particular sales relevance. So it starts off with a fairly structured flow. There's a greeting, there's kind of a filling of the basket, and there's an exit. Those things can be automated in a structured way, providing a fairly high customer experience in terms of through the journey, but also then impacting the experience in terms of the outcome, going, well, I've gone through the process, I was able to manage what I needed to without speaking to a human. So that's another practical application that we believe would certainly drive value in terms of an organization. Why? You can kind of go through a full journey, particularly in this, it's revenue based. It'll conclude that transaction, and you would have teams rather managing the fulfillment side instead of going, well, let me do the management of the placement of these particular sales transactions. So that's another practical example.
Maybe, Joe, I can take your question kind of just from a perspective of someone who's kind of implemented. I think what we've done is we've said, our goal is exceptional caller experiences. So we live in a world of one. Every person who phones in, we want to do our best to make sure they get a great, exceptional caller experience. And so we look at that. So now, I think to do that, I think firstly is, you've got to understand that caller. And so we spend a lot of time and energy putting speech recognition engines in place that firstly can transcribe what the caller says correctly. And so you think about from a South African context, where we've got 11 official languages, and each one has kind of a different way of pronouncing things. We've invested seriously in collecting audio data and training that into speech recognition models. And we've got multiple speech recognition models, and each of these are fine-tuned for the use cases we looked at. So we've got expertise that looks at that and fine-tunes it for the use case. Because if you don't understand the caller in terms of the ability to transcribe what they said into text, you're not in the game. You're not in the game. If you're trying, and most speech recognition engines kind of, if you think about kind of the global industry and you think about the series and et cetera, like, they all benchmark themselves around 75 to 85% kind of accuracy levels. And unfortunately, in the world that we live in the contact center industry, that's just not good enough. If I ask you your ID number and you give me 13 digits, I've got to get 13 out of 13. Otherwise, it's the wrong ID number. So, you know, we've had to invest heavily and specifically in things we care about like that to make sure we get those right. And so we went live in South Africa in April for the first time with the Sanlam Group. We're probably handling about 80,000 calls a month for them at the moment, and inbound calls across a variety of kind of options and self-service. And you know, in all that time, I think one or two of the key stats, we've reduced the average handling time. When they did a follow-up kind of internally in the organization around rating the experience, the previous experience, the current experience, we were able to improve the rating from 6.5 to 9.5 out of 10 in terms of the satisfaction of that. And in all that time, we haven't had a complaint. We kind of got, you know, 3,000 calls coming in a day. We're only in English, so we're not operating yet in any of the other languages, but we've trained the agent in the English to account for all the dialects. So people whose first language might be Afrikaans, Sotho, Venda, Xhosa, phoning in, we understand in English. It was a concern with clients when we went live, but actually it's turned into nothing serious. I think ultimately the number one priority of all of us when we phoning in is convenience. We want our problem solved as quickly as possible. And any skepticism around the digital agent has been because the thing hasn't understood me. It's not getting what I want, and it's not getting it quickly enough. And therefore, sometimes we want to speak to a human agent because we think perhaps they can help us quicker. The reality in South African context at the moment is, I mean, I put in fiber a little while ago. I spent literally 45 minutes waiting to speak to someone. That it's just such a horrendous experience. If I can get an answer within a few seconds of calling in, that's great. And we found that, and this was a customer who now went and has different language facilities available. So they've got different skill sets within their contact center. And with the digital agent only operating in English, but understanding the different dialects, less than 2% of the callers actually asked, can I speak to someone in my own native language? And so, you know, faced with a choice of getting an answer right now or sticking to my native language, we found commercially companies have chosen rather just to offer their digital channels in English in South Africa to date.
I think the thing about that, Dion, and you've both articulated this very well, is that when you train the agent, and I think about it in the context of a live agent, how many times, and we've talked about some of the frustrations of talking to live agents sometimes, and we recognize quite often we talk to them and they actually don't understand what we're trying to say, or not so much from a linguistic perspective, but either they haven't been trained effectively in the way that you mentioned. So we might ask a question that they can understand linguistically, but they can't understand organizationally. And so this is, again, where I think the IVA can play a key role, because using the techniques that you use in terms of training it and using those recordings to make sure that you get as many of those intents, as many of those entities as possible, really does make a big difference, I think. And I think that's something that really, again, I'm not saying that IVAs are necessarily better than people, because we said earlier, we want to talk to people, but I think they run them a pretty close second.
Yeah,
Go ahead, sorry.
We hear a lot of recordings, and look, I mean, we talk about some of the limitations. We hear a lot of recordings, and sometimes it's really hard, even as a contact center consultants, when you're sitting in there listening in, and we hear the recordings of it, especially with load shedding at the moment. Load shedding has had a massive impact on audio quality and cell phone reception. And often, I mean, we listen to basically conversations, every day from different organizations in South Africa, and you can actually see the visible impact. And we've had to kind of build into our model kind of resilience around that, to say, hold on, actually, sometimes the audio quality is too poor for either a machine or a human being to actually understand what's on the other side of the line. And so these are the kind of challenges operate in the environment that we operate in, and they're faced equally by the human agent and a machine.
Just to add on to that there's one other set of complexity. If you're dealing with contact centers, BPOs, Dion, that have got large sets of resources, 500, 1,000, 2,000, and they're working on particular sets of campaigns, understand to get kind of what we refer to as that knowledge standardization is an immense effort. Yes, there's knowledge bases and all these things, but to get that set of information set across. So often you also talk about inconsistency. I phone and I get this answer. Then you phone again and they say, no, you can actually do it this way. Then you phone, you go, well, hold on. The other one said, and then it becomes kind of like, well, what is the organization stance? Whereas we know something like an Elerian AI would kind of standardize. That's the answer, because it's designed in terms of the process around request. And it doesn't go kind of where you talk to the GPT stuff, or well, generally it says, my request is X, and therefore my understanding of what I can provide to you is A, B, or C. There's no other, whereas you find that also is operationally a challenge, because large workforce, you have to manage consistency of the message. Whereas with what you have, it's the same.
That 100%. No, look, so once it's designed into the digital agent, that's what you can get. And often it's not that the human agent wants to not follow the process, but some of the processes involved are because of regulations that says, you've got to read out 10 minutes of terms and conditions to the call at the end of the call and get them to say yes. It's a horrendous caller experience, no matter which way you do it. And you've often got your best sales agents. So these guys are really talented. They've just made a great sale. And now they're stuck at the end of the call reading terms and conditions for 10 minutes. One, they can feel the pain from the caller at the other end, saying like, can't this just be over? Yes. And two, they want to get on to the next sale, because that's how they get remunerated. So those kind of instances, I think here it becomes interesting, because one, it's obvious to give that to a digital agent is easy and let them do it. But secondly, this is where things like omni-channel become important, where we typically would look at that, break it up and say, hold on, there's a piece here that, let's just WhatsApp the caller the terms and conditions. They can click yes, and send it back, to keep them online at that kind of cost, where everything, it's just, never mind the cost, just the caller experience of having to sit there, the pain of having to listen is too much. If I was expected to do that, I'd rather not take the policy. So we look always to kind of redesign that and think it through in terms of making sure that experience, there's normally ways we can improve it.
Yeah, it's the expression I use is that customer will lose the will to live after listening to that for a few minutes.
100%.
I think one of the things you both mentioned briefly, and I just want to get into it in a little bit more with a sort of a fairly broad discussion about data. So a couple of things. Firstly, you obviously get a lot of data. You have the recordings, which make very useful ability to go back and sort of check to see how well we're doing, but also in terms of data to train the system, and also, I guess, data in terms of security, things like GDPR and all these kind of things. So just thinking about data and how best, you can utilize it, how we maintain quality over it, and how we maintain privacy. I think those are things that our audience would be interested in. And Brandon, maybe I'll, if you've seen some of these things in some of the deployments you've seen, just how you've handled some of this.
Okay. So look, I think when we talk about that intelligence, understand too, and just again, earlier you asked around the features and benefits. and I touched on some of those, but understand that as part of what you need to consider as an organization is, what do I get as part of that built-in intelligence? So I think that's the first key, the understanding of that ontology-driven intent recognition. So what does that mean? It means that your solution must contextually understand and respond to, and again, Dion, you touched on it, industry-specific requests. However, the information you're leveraging out of that is the key around, we talk about the intent recognition, and, you spoke about the percentage of success, and some organizations go, well, is 90% good enough in terms of intent recognition? You spoke about the ID number. So the first is being able to understand where in the journey you get what we call those drop-offs or the abandons, and how do you improve that? The second two, just understand that from a data perspective, is saying, how and what can I do in terms of the business process, integrate so that I'm able to, A, automate the process, but B, provide analytics that go, we're seeing your customers are engaging and are dropping off here. How do I improve that process? Because the reality is that some of the data, we call it the 10xing of the data that you're seeing, you would be able to bring to the fore and say, right, I'm seeing what's happening here. Possibly you maybe have deployed a process that you update or you have in place, and it all of a sudden increases your escalation rates. So it's about tracking some of those key measures in terms of intelligence, because the reality is, those are needed for you to make decisions around improvement. So I guess when you talk to the intelligence, it's saying, making certain that not only are you improving and learning over time, but you're also seeing the data you need to, so that you can go, right, well, I need to make improvements to improve the customer experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I think, we've got within our solution a full analytics suite. So you can kind of look and see every call, kind of what happened, why did the caller phone in, and what is the outcome right through each kind of step of the process. Our full solution is typically deployed within the client environment. So it kind of sits within their firewalls from a GDPR perspective. It's part of their systems as opposed to our system. It sits entirely within their kind of network and firewall rules. And then within that analytics, you kind of got the suite. So you can go in and you can look and you say, okay, fine, I had X number of calls. This is why people called in. And then this is what the outcome was. And then you can start to, I guess, go into what Brandon's talking about, process redesign. Hold on, this process is not efficient. How do we improve it, etc.? So I think that's the key is, like, for me, the communication layer, whether it's voice or digital, etc., sits on top of the automation layer. And that's dependent upon the client CRM stroke database backend systems. And those three kind of pieces can work together really well and effectively, but all three are required to deliver that exceptional caller experience.
And I think that that takes us to quite an interesting area, because I think we've hopefully whetted people's appetite with what we've talked about here. But I'm sure there are people thinking, well, that all sounds great, guys, but this must be really complex and difficult to implement. It's going to take us forever. Last time we did CRM, it took us 2 years and $20 million or pounds or whatever. So just in terms of that, thinking about that, how can people get started with conversational AI in a digital voice agent?
Yeah, I'll let you shoot first on that one, eh?
Cool. So I think, typically we sit with the caller. So I think getting started is identifying a use case. So where kind of does it make sense within the organization to land? We've kind of got a strategy. You land and you expand from there. So have a look at a little use case that kind of, it might be just identifying the caller when they come in, authenticate them and doing some self-service, or some kind of standardized high volume process. So, okay, fine. Well, this is how we try it out. Now, we've invested heavily also just in the ability and the speed to be able to deploy. So if you think about it, there are 4 steps. The first one is identifying the use case and building out the conversation design for that. We've built out and if you check out our website, it's on there, kind of a little walkthrough, but we've built out a no-code dashboard that allows you literally to go and build out conversations. We've got a library of these things around the different industries we're involved with. And so to take that and kind of modify it for a customer is literally a couple of hours work. So identify the use case and build out the conversation. The second piece then is actually the environment. We're deploying into cloud-based environments, so whether it's AWS or Azure, etc. And we've built out the CI/CD pipelines to be able to deploy automatically into those. So literally, that's a couple of hours work now to have once you've built the environment to deploy into it. We do require GPU for the speech recognition and the language understanding models. So it's a specific environment that we give the specs for. But nowadays, you know, the big organizations have made it really simple to spin up these environments. So we can deploy into those. And then it's really around connecting up to the telephone and connecting up to the back end. We've got standardized integrations for both, so it's pretty simple to do. You know, typically, I think we can repurpose a lot of the integrations that clients already have in place. So most times we arrive and we see, okay, maybe they've got a WhatsApp, or they've got an app, or they've got a browser that's already got APIs that are calling the client backend systems, and we just repurpose those into to be used by the virtual agent to assist the caller.
Excellent. Just to add to that, I think some of the others that you know, we're starting to see come through is that there's you know, often or not, there's components that you know that are standard in the platform that allow for you to go, well, I don't have to go and build something new, and that there's all these costs, and so we're seeing that come through. So often not part of the platform that Dion's referencing here is you kind of have standard components that you can already leverage off the shelf, for lack of a better word. And then the second is when you talk to the too expensive, you know, Jerry, it's you know, the reality here is there's smart ways that we do these things today. So you might want to kind of consider, you know, a per minute sort of scenario. You know, there's various ways that we do it, but the reality is it's not what it was 5 years ago, where it's you know, these massive, intense capital investments. You know, a lot of the work already, because of the cloud-based step change, it makes it significantly different. Plus a number of components that are off the shelf.
I mean, we've seen a lot of South African corporates have invested heavily in some of the big ERP systems, some of the big telephony systems, some of the big CRM systems. So kind of, and those things, I mean, clients have literally spent millions, hundreds of millions, some of them. You know, we plug and play into most of them. So really simple to hook us up to them. And we, for virtually all of them, really, we're a low-cost way of leveraging the investment into that you've already made into those kind of big systems or big platforms.
And I think the key thing that you mentioned off the top, Dion, and I think this is so critical in any technology deployment, is that the first place you go is you understand, you know, why are we doing this? You know, what's the rationale behind this? And of course, the rationale is going to be a number of things. It's going to be improving the customer experience, you know, reducing costs. But you know, when you start from that perspective, you're going to get a much better result, because you're not just saying, well, let's just throw the tech in and hope for the best. We know that's not happening. And I guess it kind of, as we begin to run down on time today, I thought perhaps what we would look at is perhaps a couple of things within perhaps a fairly lengthy question. And basically, we're seeing advances in the technology all the time. And by that, I mean advances in natural language processing, in natural language understanding. And I guess from that perspective, you know, how are we seeing that influence the development and the implementation in certainly in the South African market and beyond? And also, you know, what can that do to transform the customer service experience that our customers, or us as customers, are having, and you know, where are we going to be able to really leverage that? And I mean in the fairly short term, not, you know, 10 years from now, but in the coming months, and perhaps where are some of the shortcomings as well? Dion, maybe I'll just kick it off with you from the technology perspective.
Okay, I think starting off in the field that we're in, language bias is massive. So, you know, in terms of data. So, you know, for us, when we came into South Africa, there was no speech recognition engines that were remotely close to being ready for real-time speech. Make no mistake, there's some really good guys who are South African-based businesses who are great at call analytics and do that across multiple languages. But ultimately, to get the kind of accuracy we need, we had to go and rebuild data sets and do that. So there's kind of this speech recognition. There's a massive language bias about adopting this technology, or prevents adopting the technology. We've overcome that in English in South Africa. But, you know, ultimately, if you think about Africa and all the other African languages, I think there's a long way to go to build out the data sets. Our models are built on billions of hours of conversation in English that kind of exists, and then we fine tune and we add to that with our additional training. So, you know, that already exists. So for us, from a cost effective or commercial perspective, to build out models in English or major European languages is far simpler than going to do that in other languages. So I think that's part of the challenge we face as South Africans, to say, how do we make sure that's equitable and get that right? And equally, around text to speech. So this is the voice of the digital agent back to the caller. So, you know, we kind of text. So when the digital agent comes back to you and says, "Hi, Jerry, how can I help you today?" That's gone from text through a kind of a TTS engine and come back with a voice. And, you know, a lot of companies, we plug in any kind of third party a voice into our digital agent, or you can use a voice recording. We looked at a number of companies who say they've got South African voices. Bear in mind, a lot of the voice technology has improved incredibly, but can't run on our infrastructure. So telephone lines are 8 kilohertz. We need, from a GDPR perspective, but equally around a latency perspective, in terms of how quickly that digital agent gets back to the caller, we need to respond immediately. So a lot of the TTS is, now we've got voice cloning. They give them, you know, whatever, 30 seconds of voice and they can clone it, etc. Fabulous, but ultimately it can't work in a South African environment. So in a telephony environment. So, you know, the voices, the South African voices that could work are hopeless. I've got to be honest. We listen to those. We don't think we wouldn't want to put those into production. And so we've been forced up till now to use typically what we found resonated most was a UK English voice, typically female. That typically resonates well with the South African consumer. And we're busy with building out South African accented voices ourselves. And then lastly, I think the confluence of what we've built around graph or flow-based conversational AI with generative AI kind of is going to be a super interesting field over the next kind of 2 to 3 years. Generative AI kind of is creating the language in terms of going back to the human, but it has some risks around making up stuff. Does it play within the bandwidth? Does it get it right? It's not specific to the caller. Whereas you've got kind of the flow-based conversation, which is typically deployed in the contact centers, other than within FAQ, where it's very accurate. You know exactly what it's going to say. It's relevant, and it's pulling out data that's specific. How those two things merge, I think, is going to radically improve the caller experience over the next period.
Well, I think that's great, and I think that, you know, appreciate your candid view of the world, because we need to be honest about this, don't we? Brandon, the last word or words are yours. We'll give you a couple of minutes just to sort of answer the same question from your viewpoint.
Okay. I think considering that one of the other things that probably will have an impact, bar the generative AI that you're speaking to, Dion, is kind of how do you manage that and keep it on rail so that it's safe, and so on and so forth. But I think one of the others too is about that multi-level intent recognition. Some say that they do it. The reality is kind of how do you make certain that in the context of a conversation, and this for me, I believe, will improve fairly rapidly, is going, all right, so I was speaking to you about a credit card replacement, then I lost it, then, because people aren't in a situation, they may not be rational. So it also links to kind of that mood, understanding, and stress, to understand that immediately and go, right, is there a way that either I can kind of manage that multi-level intent efficiently, so that, because what happens is sometimes you would find some of them conversational bots will go, oh, okay, I'm stuck now, I need to transfer you, because it kind of flows down here. Whereas here, the multi-level intent will go, okay, I understand you actually skipped something or need to go back because there's other sets of information I need. So that, for me, I think will become more pervasive in the conversational space. And then the secondary part of that, I touched on is really saying, when you manage those intents is where you pick up stress. How do you manage those so that it becomes far wider application? So you spoke about first notification of loss. It could be that somebody has experienced something at that moment or just experienced it. How do you deal with that level of stress and then make certain that it's picked up, understood in terms of that stress, or recognize it and then manage it possibly differently? So I think you'll start seeing some of those. But for me, that multi-level intent, everybody says they can do it. The reality is, can they? So I think that you'll see come to the fore.
Yeah, because up until now, it was only people that could do that. So you're absolutely spot on. Gentlemen, it's been a very interesting and informative conversation. I think it's clearly opened the door for more of these, because I think, we've touched on a few things. I think we've all realized it's got a deep subject anyway. And I think we're certainly going to plan to have some more of these. So stay tuned for more potential announcements about the various webinars that we're going to have. If you want more information, you'll see, if you look in the chat window, if you missed the opening, video, you can check that. There's a YouTube recording of that. Also, if you want more information on each of the companies, you can go to dsg.co.za for DSG and Elerian.ai for Elerian. And thanks again. It's been a great hour. It went by very quickly. And don't forget, when we finish today, don't log out too quickly, because there's going to be a poll, really just to ask you, what do you think about this? If you'd like to see more or see something different, please be honest and let us know how you feel. And we'll make sure that we take those ideas on board. So thanks again for watching. And remember, be careful out there.